From the outset, we have trusted.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the live stream. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. So I hope everyone's very well tonight. So I just, as usual, pop to the top to see who has commented, and I'll just welcome everyone onto the stream. So we have Killer. Thank you so much, Killer, for coming on the stream and moderating again tonight. Tom, great to see you again, Tom. Thanks for moderating. We have Kenny. Great to see you, Kenny. Glasgow Kiss, great to have you on again to moderate. Dano, great to see you once again. Kenny, I've already said hello to Kenny. Brian, great to see you. Andrew Farrell, great to see you. Ryan O'Neill, great to see you again. Ryan. Keith, great to see you. Christian, great to have you on again. Magister, great to have you on. English Viking, great to see you. Seduction Asylum, great to see you. Night Raven, hope you're well. Pete, great to see you once again. Bones, great to see you. Let me see, who else have we got? Stanley Beckett, great to see you again, Stanley. PS, great to have you on again. Let me see, who else have we got? Ryan again. We Scott's Dog, great to see you. David Clay, great to have you on again, David. Wow, we're up to 84 viewers. That's fantastic. John Hart, great to see you, John. Manda Hamsters. Keith Hennessy, great to see you, Keith. Pieman, fantastic name, great to see you, Pieman. PS, I said hello already. John Hart, great to see you. Tiny Demolition Lover, fantastic name, great to see you. Ninja Tribble, that's a Star Trek reference, I imagine. Yanra, great to see you again, Yanra. Kip, great to see you. Scott, great to have you on. The Big Magnet, great to have you on. Kevin Jones, great to see you, Kevin. Sean, the Crazy Harry Duck, fantastic names. Morag, great to have you on. Morag from Scotland, great to have you. Global Twig, great to see you. Jim, great to see you. Captain Levance, great to have you on again. So I hope everyone's very well. Sorry if I missed anyone. Kevin Jones, great to have you on, Kevin. And Chris Collins as well. So great to have everyone on. Apologies if I missed anyone. So I just want to make a special shout out to Killer's niece. So I don't know what to say. It's great to have you. If you're following the stream, great to have you on. And I know Killer would be happy for me to say a big hello to you. So Killer's niece, a big hello to Killer's niece. Now, we also have John. Great to see you, John. Two Johns, John Bridge and John Ashley. Elvis, great to see you. Great to have you on, Elvis. I hope everyone's very well. So tonight we're going to talk about a number of different issues, primarily Boris Johnson. So, of course, Boris is front and center as always. So just to give you an update on what's happening here in Italy, the number of new cases has dropped for coronavirus to it's somewhat Tiny Demolition Lover is niece. Okay, that's very interesting to know. So, thank you, Max. No worries. It's great to have you on. I love the name, Tiny Demolition Lover. I don't know if that's a reference to something else, but maybe I'll Google it later. Bozo Night, oh no. Hi, Boris here, just checking out. No, don't check out. We'll make some fun of Boris Johnson as always. Boris Johnson, I think, exists to be made fun of. But I have some comments about the reducing of the 2 meter limit to 1 meter and some of the other comments he's made in this video. So I just welcome once again everyone who's coming on. Diego, great to see you, Diego. Jamie. Brexiteer, I don't like to hear both sides. Brexiteer here, don't like to hear both sides. Juan Antonio, great to have you on, Juan Antonio. Lenhan, great to see you again. Hello. Hello, Max and Boris. So just as things are, what I was saying before here in Italy, Boris the bungler, things have pretty much stabilized. The number of new cases is something like 24, I think, or 28. The number of new deaths were 28, I think, and the number of new cases were about 120 or 150. So it has stabilized. It hasn't, of course, gone down to zero, like Donald Trump had predicted, but it has stabilized. Now, I hope it's going to remain like that. Buongiorno dam. Buonasera, actually. Boris was the best if he was a couple with Theresa May, teaming up with Nigel Farage for oh my God, please no. Have we started yet? Yes, we have, Pete. So let's have a look at this video with Boris Johnson in it, and I'll pop in with some comments. Of course, remember, if you'd like to hit me with a live stream super chat, you can. I'll prioritize your question or your comment, and the moderators will make sure everyone behaves themselves tonight. Giorgio, great to see you, Giorgio. Ciao, Giorgio. I hope you're well. We allow the hamsters to drink if there is a job when pubs open. Our pub's going to reopen. Well, we will see. So let's hear what Boris Johnson had to say today.
In the common sense and perseverance of the British people, and their response has more than justified our faith. Since I set out our plan on the 11th of May, we have been clear that our cautious relaxation of the guidance is entirely conditional on our continued defeat of the virus. In the first half of May, nearly 69,000 people tested positive for COVID-19 across the UK. By the first half of June, that total had fallen by nearly 70% to just under 22,000.
So this is interesting because Boris has no longer... Simon Carr, great to have you on, Simon. Hope you're well. So, dude, great to see you. I'm late. Don't worry. So the problem here... Well, the issue here is that Boris Johnson has decided not to do the press conferences anymore. So he's actually moved the press conference into Downing Street, into Westminster. Now, why is he doing that? We will see perhaps later on. Conservator, great to see you, Conservator. Jamie and is Enox, great to have you on. Anyway, let's continue.
The number of new infections is now declining by between 2 and 4% every day. 4 weeks ago, an average of 1 in 400 people in the community in England had COVID-19. In the first half of June, this figure was 1 in 1,700. We created a human shield around the NHS, and in turn, our doctors and nurses have protected us. And together, we have saved our hospitals from being overwhelmed. On the 11th of May, 1,073 people were admitted to hospital in England, Wales and Northern Ireland with COVID-19. By the 20th of June, this had fallen by 74% to 283. This pandemic has inflicted permanent scars, and we mourn everyone we have lost. Measured by a 7-day rolling average, the number of daily deaths peaked at 943 on the 14th of April. On the 11th of May, it was 476, and yesterday, the rolling average stood at 130.
Yeah, so it's interesting, as you guys have commented on, how he has talked about a human shield around the NHS. And as you pointed out, Stephen says, yes, they didn't put a shield around care homes. It's a strange term to use, that we put a human shield around the NHS. And who was that shield? The NHS itself.
We've ordered over 2.2 billion items of protective equipment from UK-based manufacturers, many of whose production lines have been called into being to serve this new demand.
Like Pest, what was it called? Pest, some pest control company in the UK that had 16 members of staff and a turnover of £19,000. And they were given a contract. Well, we talked about that before, and there were companies who had massive capacity, were not even called to produce a single piece of PPE. But we know the reason behind that is because they didn't donate to the Conservative Party.
And yesterday we conducted or posted 139,659 tests, bringing the total to over 8 million. And while we remain vigilant, we do not believe there is currently a risk of a second peak of infections that might overwhelm the NHS.
Now, it's interesting because there is a second peak taking place in China, and there is a second peak which just started just a few days ago in Germany. Now, Germany was extremely strict with its lockdown, and China, well, we can agree or disagree with that. But how can you be so sure that there won't be a second peak, Boris?
Taking everything together, we continue to meet our 5 tests, and the chief medical officers of all 4 home nations have downgraded the UK's COVID alert level from 4 to 3, meaning we no longer face a virus spreading exponentially, though it remains in general circulation. The administrations in Scotland...
Sorry, this is nothing related to what Boris Johnson is saying, but why is that guy in the House of Commons today? That guy you can see with the glasses and the white hair. He's some sort of eccentric MP. Why is he there? What value does he add? I've seen him before. I made a video about him. I don't remember his name. Sir something. He's a lord. But he's a weirdo.
Wales and Northern Ireland hold responsibility for their own lockdown restrictions, and they will respond to the united view of the chief medical officers at their own pace, based on their own judgment. But all parts of the UK are now travelling in the same direction, and we will continue to work together to ensure that everyone in our country gets the support they need.
No, they're not all going in the same direction. Scotland and Wales have pretty much eliminated the virus, while in England it's still a serious issue. You're easing the lockdown when Wales and Scotland are not easing the lockdown. So you can't say, Desmond Sweeney, thanks very much for that. So you can't say that we're all going in the same direction, because you're not going in the same direction. I agree with what's happening in Wales and Scotland, where they are applying a brake. They're being more cautious. I think a more cautious approach is better, considering that Germany and China are seeing new cases appear. Like if the situation had been completely different, where the virus ran its course once and there was not more of a risk of a second wave, then you could say maybe Scotland and Wales are being too cautious. I don't think you can go in that direction, but there could be an argument made. But what's happening but Boris Johnson can't say that there isn't a risk of a second wave, so that's why they're easing the lockdown.
Thanks to our progress, we can now go further and safely ease the lockdown in England. At every stage...
Was that a zombie in the House of Commons? Yeah. I'm not sure what sort of illnesses there are in the House of Commons today.
Caution will remain our watchword, and each step will be conditional and reversible. Mr. Speaker, given the significant fall in the prevalence of the virus, we can change the 2-metre social distancing rule from the 4th of July.
And this is nothing to do with the science. Boris Johnson is doing this because he's under pressure from his party. MPs are putting pressure on him to ease this social distancing rule. It's not the scientists. The scientists are completely against Boris Johnson here. And he's willing once again to throw members of the public under a bus. I think that zombie was Desmond Sweeney. Tory benches are all common zombies or else, yes. Really, like, you can't increase the risk in this way. Reducing the... Sorry, I'm reading the comments and I'm getting confused. I'm already losing it. I'm off to lie down in a darkened room. I'm sorry, Jeff. You can't reduce the social distancing rule from 2 meters to 1 meter because of a political imperative. It has to be following the science. And it's just a pile of crap to say we're following the science.
I know this rule effectively makes life impossible for large parts of our economy, even without other restrictions. For example, it prevents all but a fraction of our hospitality industry from operating. That's why almost 2 weeks ago I asked our experts to conduct a review, and I will place a summary of their conclusions in the libraries of both houses this week. Where it is possible to keep 2 meters apart, people should. But
people should. In the same way people should wear a mask. But I want to thank Glasgow Kiss, who was on Discord and told me that he has seen, for example, people going into shops with a mask under their nose, with a mask under their chin. Some people putting on the mask when they get on the train and taking it off when they get off the train. Some people putting on the mask as they're in the shop. Some people entering the shop and not wearing a mask at all. So the rules surrounding mask wearing are not being enforced. You're leaving it up to the business owners themselves to enforce it. But how is a business owner going to force someone to wear a mask? Unless there's a fine or unless there's some type of government push behind it. But there isn't. We're going to encourage people. In the same way you encouraged people not to go to the pub before the lockdown.
Where it is not, we will advise people to keep a social distance of 1 meter plus, meaning they should remain 1 meter apart while taking mitigations to reduce the risk of transmission. And we are today...
1 meter plus. You're just adding more confusion, Boris. It's like, I can't stay 2 meters, so I'll stay 1 meter plus. 1 meter plus 1 millimeter. 1 meter plus 10 centimeters. Like, you're just create more confusion. If you said, look, you have to stay 2 meters apart, and that's it. Not everyone would respect it, of course, but at least you would compensate somewhat for the people who would not respect it. By telling people to stay 1 meter apart, of course, some people are not going to stay 1 meter apart. What I mean is, if you increase the threshold, if you maintain the threshold quite high, the vast majority of people will respect it. But the small number of people who don't respect it will have less of an impact. If you reduce the threshold, the majority of the people will respect that threshold, but that smaller minority will of course be rubbing shoulders.
Publishing guidance on how business can reduce the risk by taking certain steps to protect workers and customers, and these include, for instance, avoiding face-to-face seating by changing office layouts, reducing the number of people in enclosed spaces, improving ventilation, using protective screens and face coverings, closing non-essential social spaces, providing hand sanitizer, changing shift.
But why wasn't this implemented during the lockdown? Okay, you're opening up some businesses, but some businesses have already opened and you're not implementing these changes. There's some businesses are already open, but you haven't implemented these changes. Why not? Why are you only doing it now?
Patterns so that staff work in set teams. And of course, we already mandate face coverings on public transport. While
why only public transport? Why not in all places where people are in confined spaces?
Experts cannot give a precise assessment of how much the risk is reduced. They judge these mitigations would make 1 metre plus broadly equivalent to the risk at 2 metres if those mitigations are fully implemented. So either will be acceptable and our guidance will change accordingly. And this vital change enables the next stage of our plan to ease the lockdown. And Mr. Speaker, I'm acutely conscious that people will ask legitimate questions about why certain activities are allowed and others are not. And I must ask the House to understand that the virus has no interest in these debates. Its only interest, its only ambition is to exploit any opportunities to recapture ground that we might carelessly vacate. And
sounds like the Tory party.
to reinfect our communities. And so there is only one certainty. The fewer social contacts you have, the safer you will be. And my duty, our duty as the government, is to guide the British people, balancing our overriding aim of controlling the virus against our natural desire to bring back normal life. We cannot lift all the restrictions at once, so we have to make difficult judgments.
So this is Boris attempting to be, the strict father. I am lifting some of the restrictions, but not all of them. But in reality, he's just creating more confusion. Let me just read some of your comments before we continue. Precisely, Max, regarding masks. When I go to the local supermarket, it's about 5% tops with masks. It's a joke, but not a funny one. Face coverings cut transmission by up to 50%. Yeah, that's correct. If they reduce the social distancing, does that mean that the House of Commons will fill up again? To set an example. Probably. Well, Jacob Rees-Mogg wants to refill up Parliament because Boris needs his support base. Boris, your duty is to run the effing country. I'm an engineer and I'm going to design a belt with a 500 millimeter peripheral width. When it comes in all sizes, then I get a government grant to develop this. 1 meter is nothing. How many messages have the Tories sent out now? This is the third right. Confusing to anyone. Max, have you seen the video from yesterday from a different bias? He said that the comments went past a little bit too quickly. We're getting an extension. Act like there's a deal. It was Brexit. Remain. It's the same. Do you think they will do that? I'll come to Brexit in a little bit. 2 meters was 1.5 meters. 1 meter is now half a meter. Pauline, Max, bedroom PCs. Wasn't it Jacob Rees-Mogg that was saying we should go with yards, not meters? Anyway, let's continue with these Boris shenanigans.
And every step is scrupulously weighed against the evidence. Our principle is to trust the British public to use their common sense in the full knowledge of the risks.
So basically, we don't want to take responsibility. Let's dump the responsibility on the public. Yeah, no, we trust you to use your common sense. But it's not about you trusting the public to use common sense. It's if we give a clear guideline, then we need to back it up. But if we give a vague guideline, then we don't need to back it up. We don't need to invest in policing or in some means to enforce these rules. If we don't make any clear rules, then we don't have to do anything. And then we can also avoid being blamed. Well, it's not our fault. The people didn't follow the rules. What were the rules? Well, on Monday the rules were this, on Tuesday the rules were something else. So it's about creating confusion. The people don't follow the rules. The people see others not following the rules, not getting punished. And then, if you're walking around with a mask on and you see everyone else not wearing a mask, it's not exactly encouraging for you to continue to wear a mask, even though you feel like it's the right thing to do. If you're the only one doing it, you're more likely just to take it off and go, to hell with this. Why am I the one following the rules and no one else is? Jeff Taylor is here. Hello, Jeff. Welcome to the stream. I hope you're well.
That the more we open up, the more vigilant we will need to be. From now on, we will ask people to follow guidance on social contact instead of legislation. In that spirit, we advise that from the 4th of July, 2 households of any size should be able to meet in any setting inside or out. That does not mean they must always be the same 2 households. It will be possible, for instance, to meet one set of grandparents one weekend, the others the following weekend. But we are not...
Who is that in the background? Yes. Sorry.
We are not recommending meetings of multiple households indoors because of the risks of creating greater chains of transmission. Outside, the guidance remains that people from several households can meet in groups of up to 6, and it follows that 2 households can also meet regardless of size.
Okay, so 2 households can meet. So, for example, if I go with my brother, we can go to, or my sister or my wife or whoever's in my household, we can go and visit another house, 2 other households. Is it within a week or is it not within a week? I didn't understand. And we can meet outside, but we cannot meet inside. So if we meet in their garden, can we go through the house together, or do we have to go single file? Once again, I don't think this is actually helping. Brian, thank you so much for that super chat. Giving you a super chat just because you have more fortitude to listen to whatever he's babbling on about. Thank you so much for that. I'm trying. I'm trying to make head nor tail of this. Or do you normally say it? I can't make head nor tail of this. I'm trying to make head or some sort of tail from this. So I'll try and decipher what he's saying. But I don't think his intention is to inform.
Mr. Speaker, I can tell the House that we will also reopen.
Sorry, thank you so much. Also, William Hope. Thank you so much. If you have a question, stick it in the chat. I'll respond to it. Thank you so much.
Restaurants and pubs.
Hallelujah. I think these people were handpicked to be there. Hallelujah. Is it Troll Count, not Jeff Taylor? Oh, Jeff. I was hoping Jeff would be on tonight. 2 households. Let's bring back wife swap. Well, Boris, he's been doing a lot of wife swapping over the last number of years. But you can hear the voices in the background. They're there to give Boris moral support. Maybe they've filled them up with a few whiskies before they turned up as well.
All hospitality indoors will be limited to table service, and our guidance will encourage minimal staff and customer contact. we will ask businesses to help NHS Test and Trace respond to any local outbreaks by collecting contact details from customers, as happens in other countries, and we will work with the sector to make this manageable. Almost as eagerly awaited as a pint will be a haircut, by me, Mr. Speaker, and so we will reopen hairdressers.
Look, you have to give Boris at least, he has a sense of humour.
With appropriate precautions, including the use of visors. We also intend to allow some other close contact services, such as nail bars, to reopen as soon as we can when we're confident they can operate in a COVID-secure way.
So it's lap dancing now, says Jeb. But once again, has this arrived at a level that you think is acceptable to reopen? I really don't think this is at a level that's acceptable. So these actions that he's taken are somewhat understandable, but I still think the number of new cases and the number of new deaths are too high. John Hart, thank you so much for that question, for that super chat. PMQ's Starmer goes on COVID or Russia report. I really hope Starmer would be a bit more aggressive in the PMQs. I understand he's not for theatrics, and I sometimes think the theatrics take away from reasonably legitimate questions. So it's important not to play too much to the camera, but at the same time, I think you need to hit Boris where it hurts. You need to insult his ego. And you need to be able to do that with the right person. And I hope Starmer is capable of that. I haven't really heard that much so far. He's been very clear and concise and to the point in most of his debates with Boris Johnson. He sounds very professional, of course, as a politician. But I think, the odd, punch in the jugular would be useful.
From the 4th of July, provided that no more than 2 households stay together, people will be free to stay overnight in self-contained accommodation, including hotels and bed and breakfasts as well. Sorry,
I just any chance of a video on the leaked Labour report? So I'll look into that, Bob. I promise. I'll see about doing a video for the channel on that. I can't do it tonight, but if I don't do it I don't do a specific video for that, I will do one. I'll cover it on one of the next live streams for sure. So it is very interesting how this report talks about what happened. It's a sort of post-mortem of Labour following the election. So I definitely will do something about that. Thanks very much for the super chat.
Well as campsites, as long as shared facilities are kept clean. Most leisure facilities and tourist attractions will reopen if they can do so safely, including outdoor gyms and playgrounds, cinemas, museums, galleries, theme parks and arcades, as well as libraries, social clubs and community centres.
I still think it's very early. Here in Italy, cinemas haven't opened yet. I don't think they're going to open until probably after the summer, September or maybe October. I think this is a better approach. Now, maybe it's too cautious, but I think opening cinemas and things like this in clubs, like social clubs, on the 4th of July, I still think it's very early for Boris, for the UK. Now, I don't know what's happening in other parts of the UK. This is just an English initiative, or is it also going to happen in Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland? Which raises another point. If there's social distancing of 2 meters in Scotland or in Wales, because Northern Ireland is sort of a separate case, And you cross the border from Wales into England or Scotland into England. You no longer have to maintain social distancing of 1 meter. What about people who move from England into Scotland or into Wales? Will they be fined if they don't respect? Opening cinemas should be a year away. I agree. So how is this going to be monitored? How is this going to be? Is 1 meter plus? How is this going to be enforced? Things very different here in Wales. How are the? I assume they're more similar to Scotland, but I'm not familiar. I'm not very familiar with Scotland, but I'm more familiar with what's happening in Scotland than I am with Wales.
Close proximity venues, such as nightclubs, soft play areas, indoor gyms, swimming pools and spas will, I'm afraid, need to remain closed for now, as will bowling alleys and water parks. But my right honourable friends, the Business and Culture Secretaries, will establish task forces with public health experts and these sectors to help.
So task forces, okay. So, which will mean nothing.
Them become COVID secure and reopen as soon as possible. We will also work with the arts industry on specific guidance to enable choirs, orchestras and theatres to resume live performances as soon as possible. Recreation and sport will be allowed, but indoor facilities including changing rooms and courts will remain closed, and people should only play close contact team sports with members of their household. Mr. Speaker, I know that many have mourned the closure of places of worship, and this year Easter, Passover and Eid all occurred during the lockdown. So I'm delighted that places of worship will be able to reopen for prayer and services, including weddings with a maximum of 30 people, all subject to social distancing.
Will Boris be planning one?
Meanwhile, our courts, probation services, police stations and other public services will increasingly resume face-to-face proceedings. Wraparound care for school-aged children and formal childcare will restart over the summer.
So I'm just curious as to what a conservator has said. So in the Netherlands, the PM also explained the rules for sex clubs. How do you maintain social distancing in a sex club? That would be interesting to see. Or maybe not to see, but to know.
Primary and secondary education will recommence in September with full attendance, and those children who can already go to school should do so because it is safe, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, it's safe. This is the conflict he has. This is the conflict he has with the teaching union. The teaching union have said it's not safe. We don't want to send our staff back into these schools that are not prepared correctly. Now, it's not in all cases, but in some cases, there are schools where they don't have any measures put in place. They haven't been given proper guidelines by the government. So the head teachers are attempting to use their own ad hoc approach. And of course, the idea soft play sex clubs. Now, I think soft play areas are, maybe it's sports where you don't have, like, not like rugby or football where you have strong physical contact. But maybe, I'm not sure. Soft play areas. That's an interesting question, Night Raven. People always maintain social distancing from me in sex clubs. Maybe you need to go to different ones, John. 4 weddings and plenty of funerals. Very, very good point, Andy. Okay.
Mr. Speaker, we will publish COVID secure guidelines for every sector that is reopening and slowly but surely these measures will restore a sense of normality. After the toughest restrictions in peacetime history, we are now able...
Okay. Killer, get your mind out of the gutter. So the toughest restrictions in the UK, but not the toughest restrictions in Europe, not the toughest restrictions in the world. You know, people were still able to wander around without masks, without hand sanitizer. So there were, you know, people were protesting. I'm not going to go into that today, but there weren't many arrests for people breaking social distancing rules. Some people were able to travel around the country to test their eyesight. So you can't say that there were the toughest restrictions in peacetime. They were the only restrictions in peacetime.
Able to make life easier for people to see more of their friends and families, and to help businesses get back on their feet and get people back into work. But the virus has not gone away. We will continue. We
need to stay alert. It's lurking around every corner. It's lurking under your table. It's hiding behind the curtains. It's hiding up Ian Duncan Smith's nose, ready to pop out at any time.
Continue to monitor the data with the Joint Biosecurity Centre and our ever more effective test and trace system. And I must be clear to the House.
It's interesting he dropped the NHS test and trace system. You know, at the beginning he was talking, not at the beginning of this press conference basically, but at the beginning of the crisis he was talking about the NHS test and trace. Now he has dropped it, which is interesting, because it was never actually an NHS test and trace system. It was run by a private company.
That as we have seen in other countries, there will be flare-ups for which local measures will be needed, and we will not hesitate to apply the brakes and reintroduce restrictions even at national level if required.
I wonder, would Boris respond to these, local flare-ups in the same way he responded to local flooding? Wait a few weeks and then turn up and get verbally abused by people because their homes had been destroyed, or get verbally abused by people because their loved ones have died. And if Boris Johnson is talking about, we're going to deal with this as soon as they happen, well, he doesn't exactly have a good track record, does he?
So I urge everyone to stay alert, control the virus, and save lives. Let's keep washing our hands, staying 2 meters apart wherever feasible, mitigating the risks at 1 meter where not, avoiding public transport where possible, wearing a mask when you have to use public transport, getting tested immediately if you have symptoms, self-isolating if instructed to do so by NHS Test and Trace. Today...
But it's all just, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. We're not really doing anything. We're opening up things. We're allowing the virus to spread. But you need to maintain the restrictions. You need to stop the virus from spreading. Yeah, we may set up a committee or something if there's a local flare-up. And I'll be in charge of it. But it doesn't exactly install confidence.
We can say that our long national hibernation is beginning to come to an end, and life is returning to our streets and to our shops. The bustle is starting to come back, and a new but cautious optimism is palpable. But I must say to the House, it would be all too easy for that frost to return. And that is why we will continue to trust in the common sense and the community spirit of the British people to follow this guidance, to carry us through and to see us to victory over this virus. And I commend, Mr. Speaker, this statement to the House.
This victory, so it's is he going to be standing on top of an aircraft carrier, standing on the deck of an aircraft carrier, shouting, "Mission accomplished"? But okay, let's just change a gear a little bit, because we need to to rinse out our mouths after listening to Boris Johnson for a bit. So I just want to lighten the mood a little bit. So we're going to watch a short video, and then I'll come back, and if you have, I'll read some of your questions. So you can prepare something to ask.
We don't have a government right now. We don't have a government right now. They're just a bunch of conmen and they conned us all somehow. And we don't have a government right now. This administration isn't real. And sure, by now you know that that's the deal. We're driving towards the cliff edge and there's no one at the wheel. And this administration isn't real. As strange as it may seem, they aren't just a PR team. Their sole concern is selling bullshit to us. But their swagger is all gone. They've been floundering since day one. They screwed themselves and now they're trying to screw us. This administration is a hoax. Sorry to have to lay this on you folks. And I know this one's not funny, but I'm all out of jokes. And this administration is a hoax.
This video was...
Very nice. Okay. So let's move on to the next topic, which is quite interesting. In just a moment, I'll load the video. I'll load the link. So we go from bad to worse. Let me just read some of your comments before we jump to this topic. Let me see. The voters want the pubs open. I agree, Matchbox. It's not following the science. It's following maybe the Tories or the voters or the public, listening to the public and not listening to the scientists. Sometimes it's important to listen to the public, but the public are not experts on this issue. Artemis, great to see you. I hope you're well. Hope you managed to do all your exams and all your preparation for your exams. You don't stay on the stream if you have to if you have to study. UK for sale. I thought it had already been sold. Look up the Arrogant Worms Assumption song. Maybe we'll keep that towards the end. I plead not guilty. Creep show. From bad to worse, yes. The frog. Okay, so let's hear what it says. This is quite an interesting story. So I'll just read the title. So it says here, Nigel Farage trip to attend Donald Trump rally investigated by Homeland Security Committee. 100 likes, fantastic. Keep hitting the like button, guys. Farage after Bozo, sounds fab. Well, this is a funny story. So, US congressman has launched an investigation after Nigel Farage apparently flew to America to attend a Donald Trump rally during the coronavirus pandemic. Benny G. Thompson, chairman of the House of Representatives Committee on Homeland Security, said the decision to allow the visit raised numerous troubling questions at the time of travel restrictions from the UK. The US has barred entry to arrivals from Britain, with the exception of US citizens, their family members, and individuals who meet specified exceptions. So I wonder what exception Nigel Farage was able to make for himself. Is it official bootlicker? Maybe that was his exception. Brexit Party leader Mr. Farage posted a photograph of himself on Saturday with the caption, "In the USA, only 24 hours from Tulsa, the destination of the US president's rally over the weekend." Mr. Thompson said he sent a letter to Chad Wolf, acting Secretary of Homeland Security, requesting all relevant documents on the decision to waiver the travel ban for Mr. Farage. This is insane. Is insane. Why the hell did Nigel Farage get diplomatic status? Nigel Farage is not a member of Parliament. He's not a party leader. Well, he's a party leader, but he doesn't hold a seat in Parliament. He's not a minister. He's not a special envoy. He's not a bureaucrat. He's not a civil servant. How is it possible that Nigel Farage got permission to travel? I really don't understand. He said the decision of the Trump administration to admit Mr. Farage to the United States to enable him to attend a campaign rally at a time when most travel from the United Kingdom to the US had been suspended raises numerous troubling questions, as does the claim that such travel was in the national interest. He's friends with Bannon. Yes, I agree, Kenny. Brown nose or not bootlegger. He starts with the boots and then he becomes a brown noser. He's one of the president's chums. Is this not something that would be impeachable? Endangering national security. This is endangering national security. So the president probably signed off on this. So once again, Donald Trump endangered national security. What value is Nigel Farage? He's not a president. He's not a world leader. He's not the prime minister. If it was Boris Johnson going there, you could somewhat understand it. I wouldn't really understand it, but Nigel Farage is a nobody. Just because he's Donald Trump's friend. Can you imagine if Obama had done something like this? Anyway, Mr. Thompson, a Mississippi Democrat, said a statement provided to his office by America's Customs and Border Protection confirmed Mr. Farage was initially denied boarding while attempting to fly from the UK to the US due to the coronavirus travel restrictions. According to the congressman, the CBP said the Department of Homeland Security conducted a review and determined Mr. Farage's travel was permissible as his entry to the US would be in the national interest, and he was allowed to board the flight. So he put people in the UK at risk, and he put people in the US at risk. Imagine if Nigel Farage had been infected. In his letter to Mr. Wolf, Mr. Thompson has requested that the Department of Homeland Security provide all communications since the 14th of March related to Mr. Farage's trip to the US. He also requested documents on the individual who ultimately approved travel to the US by Mr. Farage. I wonder who that was. And the determination and justification of that trip was a matter of national interest. Sky News has contacted the Brexit Party for comment. It goes on just to read the last part. Mr. Farage previously appeared alongside Mr. Trump to give a speech at a rally in Mississippi in August 2016 before the last US presidential election. At the time, he spoke about his role in the campaign for Britain to leave the European Union, but stopped short of endorsing Mr. Trump for president, which is weird. Why would he not go that far? It was announced earlier this month that Mr. Farage will no longer host his LBC radio show, which he has presented since January 2017. It's curious how he didn't endorse Donald Trump. Now, it's interesting why anyone who supports Donald Trump would actually understand why Nigel Farage is there, or would actually understand who the hell Nigel Farage is. Oh, look, there's this guy with an English accent. He's supporting Donald Trump. That must mean Donald Trump is good. That would be the Trump supporter mentality or justification for that. But of course, nothing is going to happen to Nigel Farage. But the idea that he, put U.S. national security at risk, and he also was allowed to break rules, while not being a diplomat or being an MP or an elected official. It's very strange. He's no longer an MEP. Like, if he had gone as an MEP, there could be some justification. I still don't believe there would be a justification, but you could somewhat bend the justification round. Farage was planning to make millions in speaking fees, of course, by touring colleges this year. That's the reason his contact with LBC got terminated. Poor sod, coronavirus killed that for him. And now he's making videos on the beach. Maybe the 1 million people who were supposed to show up at Trump's heard Nigel Farage will be there. Trump only has 6,200 people to over 1 million supporters. That was epic trolling. So it was these TikTok fans, fans of a TikToker. I don't know what you call them, like a YouTuber. Who encouraged her fans or other fans to book up all the tickets for Trump's rally and then not go. That was hilarious. They were saying we were going to have 1 million people at this rally, and 6,000 odd people turned up. I hate K-pop fans, but good for them. They got him good. Yes. I'm not really even all that familiar with K-pop. I remember. Once I went to buy something from the hardware shop, like the electronics store, and they had these, Samsung TVs and these people dancing, and I assume that's K-pop, like something from South Korea or Japan. There's K-pop and J-pop. I don't remember what's the difference. Maybe someone will inform me in the chat. TikTok action was epic. Note to self, don't piss off K-pop stars too. Yes. Congratulations to Dundee Football Club. They are more popular than the US president. Okay, so let's move on to it's K-pop. Okay, so let's move on to the next topic. Let me see if I can get this up on the screen. Whoops. No, I'm getting notifications. Okay, so it says here constituents bombard MPs with tens of thousands of emails over Dominic Cummings. So this is from a couple of weeks ago, but it's still an interesting one that sort of was under the radar somewhat. So the furor over Dominic Cummings' breach of lockdown rules has prompted tens of thousands of people to flood their MPs' inboxes, with some describing as the biggest outpouring since Brexit. A Guardian analysis has found as Boris Johnson tried to draw a line under the crisis involving his chief advisor, constituents across the country sent missives to their MPs, with many sharing stories of their own lockdown hardships. So this is, once again, it's this idea that Dominic Cummings, of course, broke the rules, didn't get punished, and is damaging the Conservative Party. Now, it's interesting how Dominic Cummings has sort of disappeared of late. He's no longer... Can you seriously Can you see us properly, Mr. Cummings? It says here, polling suggests that most people were unconvinced of Cummings' explanation of his movements delivered by a hastily arranged press conference in the Downing Street Rose Garden on Monday. So this was a few weeks ago. This article was amended on 30th of May. Okay, so no, it hasn't been updated. But the idea that Dominic Cummings, there is this idea on the right that Cummings, didn't do anything wrong, and the public support him, but it's not the case. The public are not supportive of Dominic Cummings. And it's interesting how he has disappeared. I haven't seen any news. So this is from the 30th of May? So since the 30th of May, I haven't heard anything about Dominic Cummings. So which is interesting. Okay. So let's move on to the next one. So I'm going quite quickly tonight. No, let me just read some of your comments before we move on. Waiting for comments to come and troll the live stream. I shouldn't mention his name. He probably has hundreds of sock puppets and trolls. Then again, who am I to judge? I like to dress all in black and listen to people screaming about Satan, death, and destruction. Gotta love church. There's a Father Ted. I don't know if you're familiar. Some of you are familiar with Father Ted. There was an episode where Father Ted had a friend, an old priest friend who was a secret Nazi, and the priest died. No, it wasn't. No, they did. They took a cyanide pill by mistake instead of a Valium, and both him and this priest died anyway. The priest died, and all of his paraphernalia. So there was Nazi paraphernalia was sent to Father Ted. But before this, Father Ted was, people were saying, "Are you a racist now, Father?" So he was in the pub meeting the Chinese community in Craggy Island, and he was trying to convince them that he's not a racist. And he said, fascists dress in black and go around telling people what to do, while priests, more drink. Anyway, that was a very nice episode. I think it was "Are You Right There, Father Ted?" Anyway, I'm getting quite sidetracked. What's Farage's position on healthcare, housing, education, foreign policy, devolution? And he's nothing to say except immigration. He has actually talked about healthcare. He wants it privatized. So he has talked about that. Foreign policy, I don't know. Devolution, that would be an interesting... Is he pro or anti Scottish independence? I imagine he's anti Scottish independence because he ran, a pro English party. So, and the English don't like Scottish independence generally. So I don't see him being a fan of Scottish independence, which I don't think the irony would be lost on him. But you never know. What if he pops up as a pro-independence future, party for independence? I don't know. Yoon. On other issues, education, I think he's pro small government, so just privatize everything. So I don't see him being a supporter of anything like that. The only thing I would agree with him probably on, but not for the reason that he would agree with me, is what we would agree on, changing the voting system, to a proportional representation model. So he actually supports that. Of course, the reason he supports it is because it would support his smaller party. It would increase their chances of, winning seats in Westminster. They have no hope at the moment because of first past the post. That's why they do so well in the European Parliament elections in the past, because the system allows smaller parties to gain more seats. It's more democratic, And once again, the irony of the European Parliament elections being more democratic than the Westminster elections, of course, is not lost, or it is lost on Brexiteers and Nigel Farage. And it's something that I continually bring up with Brexiteers who talk about, the European Union is undemocratic. And yes, but how did Nigel Farage get there? How come there are no Brexit Party MPs? There were no UKIP MPs. And maybe there was one UKIP MP, I don't remember. But there were not a sizable party in Parliament. it's a system that is designed to maintain two large parties, the first past the post, Labour and the Conservative Party. Now, of course, it has cracked of late, because now you're seeing all these coalitions until Boris took an 80-seat majority. But I think this is much of an anomaly. It's not going to be something that you're going to see again in the future. Brexit was really the driving force there, of course. The EU is undemocratic, but the UK ended up with Dominic Cummings. You're right. Rasputin. Okay, so let's... Oh my god, sorry, I dropped something. Ignore it, it's okay. I hope I didn't frighten anyone. My desk is a disaster. I need to listen to Jordan Peterson about tidying your room. Okay.
So Boris Johnson.
So this is a report from from Channel 4 News about Boris Johnson's opening up of the UK, of England more than the UK. So let's hear what they had to say. This is quite interesting.
Has announced sweeping changes to the lockdown in England. From Saturday the 4th of July, you can have dinner out, have a drink in a pub.
Sorry, the hamster saved. The hamsters are safe. Sounded like your rat. It's actually my Mrs. Max. quick check, Mrs. Max. I'll just explain what happened. So Mrs. Max's father, my father-in-law, always receives from. So he has these people come to his place of work, and they deliver him these, I don't know, call them knickknacks or something. These corporate gifts, and one of them is a box of paper clips. And he continually gives them to us, saying, "Look, use this. I don't need it." Okay, so it was sitting on the table next to me. I almost never use paper clips, and I moved my hand because I was gesturing, like I'm almost Italian now, and I knocked it on the floor. So I'll pick it up later. So it's a piece of plastic cover, and it smashed open. I don't think it's broken, but so the hamsters are okay. I don't think I frightened them too much. Anyway, I'll get back to the video.
Pub, go on a staycation, get your hair cut with safety precautions in place. A 1 metre plus rule will replace the previous requirement that people keep at least 2 metres distance between each other, and 2 households of any size.
Glass cookies. Prefer glass. It's a good advice. You guys are terrible. You don't believe me, of course. I'm not Boris Johnson, okay? I do tell the truth from time to time.
Can meet up inside or out. Pubs and restaurants, cinemas, museums and hotels can all reopen, providing they've made changes to reduce the possible spread of COVID-19. But other riskier...
Sorry, just I have to read these comments. It's the sound of the UK crashing out of the EU. Tom says, I got my haircut this afternoon. No, I'm laughing and I can't stop. I have the giggles. I hope did they use a visor, or did they use some particular equipment?
Venues like nightclubs, soft play centres and beauty salons will remain.
So can somebody please tell me what these soft play areas are? Because I have these terrible images in my mind, by you guys. You guys have put this horrible image in my mind what a soft play center is. But anyway, so we can see here what Boris was talking about before. So the 1 meter plus rule. So we have at least we have it written down so we can see it better. So it's 2 households can meet up. Pubs, restaurants, cinemas, museums and hotels are open. So okay, so pubs, restaurants are, I think, less of a problem. Museums, you can maintain a distance from people. Hotels, to a certain extent, you stay in your room. It's cleaned every day, hopefully. Play area for kids with soft toys. Okay. Thank you very much, Crackerman. Hard to play the thing at the bottom. It's for kids, okay. I imagine it's those rubber mats that kids can play on. Now, my issue really is pubs and cinemas. Now, pubs, how do you maintain social distancing in a pub? At least here in Italy, the pubs are in a way like restaurants. You go in, you sit at a table, and the drinks are brought over to you. There isn't a bar, really, a bar service, where you stand at a bar or drink from a bar. Well, that's something typical in the UK. Now, cinemas is a big problem. How are you going to maintain a meter distance from someone in the cinema? You sit right next to them. You have people sitting right behind you or right in front of you. You're not maintaining 1 meter. Definitely not 1 meter plus.
Closed for now. The changes for the hospitality industry won't be introduced so soon in Scotland and Wales. And the government's chief scientist was keen to warn that the virus has not gone away, describing...
Finally, some voice of reason. And also what's happening in Scotland and Wales. That means that people from Scotland can go on holiday to England. But English people cannot go on holiday in Scotland. So is this an attempt by Boris Johnson to steal tourism from Scotland and Wales? Maybe I'm just being too cynical here.
This as a long haul. Our political editor Gary Gibbon reports.
We can say that our long national hibernation is beginning to come to an end, and life is returning to our streets and to our shops. The bustle is starting to come back, and a new but cautious optimism is palpable.
But I don't want to be a wet blanket here, but I think actually quieter cities without all this overcrowding is actually something positive. Public transport with fewer people on board is something more pleasurable. Who likes to be on a train or on a tram or on a bus in the morning with someone's armpit in your face because there's no seat to sit down? I'd actually prefer if we had fewer people on the road. There would be less pollution, there would be less traffic, less delays. Being able to go into a pub or in a restaurant and not have to book it 6 months in advance, or to have to queue outside waiting for a table to be available. I'm not saying it because I don't give a crap about the people who run these businesses, but maybe we need to make it more pleasurable and not just focus on bums on seats. I think we need to change our way of dealing with these types of services. The service provider and the customer. Make it more pleasurable, I think. Maybe increase the price, but make it more pleasurable. I think people are more willing to... But you, Max, better than pieces, you know what I'm talking about.
It'll be some time before the paint wears off the 2 metre warnings, and the government wants you to observe them where you can. But there's a new slogan born today.
1 metre plus.
So it was, stay at home, stay alert. Now I have to change my live stream. Thank you very much, Boris. At the end of every live stream, I would say, stay alert. Now I have to say 1 metre plus. It doesn't have the same ring to it.
Meaning they should remain 1 metre apart while taking mitigations to reduce the risk of transmission.
That means businesses can waive the 2 metre rule if they take special measures to reduce the chances of infection, which in some settings might mean face masks, perspex screens, for many restaurants, reducing the number of tables. You're going to have some tables in here spaced out.
We have to, as quick as possible. I mean, we are certainly losing seats. Yeah?
Will you make money that way?
Well, this is a very good question because, I mean,
my main worry is in winter.
Know. You can't really predict actually what is happening.
Biele and Reinhard Weiss run 3 German-themed restaurants, this one at Kingston upon Thames.
There are German-themed restaurants in the UK. Wow, I didn't know about that.
2-metre rule made business impossible for them and many others. Today's changes give a sector which shed 500,000 jobs this year a chance of holding on.
The challenge now is how can we staunch the flow? So I think we are going to see a contraction of the industry. We will lose some businesses. Our hope is that we can keep job losses just at that 500,000 mark.
Opening for business.
So let me just respond to some of the comments. Do you know the biggest problem with social distancing in pubs? What if 2 people have to use the loo at the same time? That's an interesting question. Yeah. Like, I have been to some restaurants here. So I've gone to a number of restaurants here in Italy. And the restaurants were empty. So when I had to use the loo, it wasn't a problem. There was nobody else there. There wasn't a queue or anything like that. But yeah, it is a problem. Like, you know, I imagine, I don't know if it's the same in the UK, but I remember in Ireland, you know, it was on a Saturday night in a pub, it was a free-for-all. So that's not going to be the case anymore. You know, the women's toilet would be, there was a queue. The men's toilet was just full of guys, you know, responding to the call of nature everywhere. So that's not going to be the case going forward. So how our business is going to manage? Are they going to have like a take a number to go to the toilet? Yeah, toilets can be controlled. Maybe there's a special lock on the door that only one person, you know, you can get in and you get out, and then it only allows one person. I don't know. It's maybe we should ask Boris Johnson how it's going to work.
Alongside pubs and restaurants, much of the tourism industry, like Bosworth Water Park. From 4th July, it can open up its campsite and log cabins, though guidelines are expected to lay down strict cleaning rules for common facilities and for self-catering.
I don't think we're going to be able to work at 100% occupancy, but I'd like to think we can get to about 75%. For the tourism sector, though, this year isn't about making a profit, and it's about fighting to survival to get through to a profit next year.
But still in high...
I still think it's water parks are not a good way to go yet. I don't know how important they are to the UK tourist industry. Like, they're a much bigger industry perhaps here in the Mediterranean. And I understand the problems that they're facing, but I still think it's too early.
Hibernation, some businesses, the government says it's still not safe to open.
Close proximity venues.
Sorry, dude says you could always tell the man to go outside. No, that's disgusting, please. There's a famous German sausage eateries in London called Hermann des Hermann. Hermann des Hermann. Oh my god. Nice bird. Businesses won't be able to uphold rules, neither make enough profit. Winter is coming. The only reason for Johnson to agree to an extension is to get the pound up again. So that all the stuff Cummins and his dad brought up rise in value. Yeah, spot up. I know that this isn't going to... I know that I won't be going to Witherspoon's, that's for sure. I hope Witherspoon's feels the chill, considering what they've been doing. Water parks need toilets. Are we learning something new about Night Raven?
Such as nightclubs, soft play areas, indoor gyms, swimming pools and spas will, I'm afraid, need to remain closed for now.
Venues like restaurants that do open are being asked to take customers' names and contact details so they can be traced if there's an outbreak linked to the site.
Look, that's not happening here. Does anyone actually believe that they're going to take people's names and addresses? Also, in the UK, you don't have ID cards. So, I go into a pub or a restaurant and they say, can I have your name, please? Yes, Max Robespierre. Can I have your address? Yes, Paris. No, Marseille. They could... I could say anything. And who's going to track this? Who's going to follow up on this? And who's going to monitor all of this? As people come in, you have to give your name and address. It's going to be chaotic. And I don't see the actual value of it, because once again, a real track and trace system would be better than asking the local businesses or small businesses to track and trace people, or at least to monitor who comes in and who goes out.
Came back from Munich. The beer gardens, they are policed, they are controlled. Interesting. Everybody has to fill out a form, with the address and telephone number and its name on it.
Okay, so that's happening in Germany. It's not happening here in Italy. I haven't seen it happen here, as far as I know. So it's happening in Germany. He's saying this, but I still don't see how it would work. But I think in Germany you have ID cards, so it's as far as I know, if there's someone from Germany who can, they do take your address. So if there's somebody here from Germany who can confirm, you have ID cards. Here in Italy, you have an ID card. In the UK, you don't. So I don't know how they would prove that you are who you say you are. Who's going to believe if you're... Surely they would recognize me. I've heard mixed things about the truth behind Tim Martin's COVID actions, but I tend to agree with you. I think it could have been a lot of it for show. So
for contact tracing, I found this quite impressive. Yeah.
Would you be okay operating that here?
Absolutely no problem.
Yeah.
I mean,
but we will do it online.
What about your customers? Would they be okay?
I think I have a feeling
with
people are amazingly adaptable to this sort of situation.
So I agree. I think most people, if you go into the restaurant and say, "Can I have your name and address?" because we need to track. Okay, most people, 90% of people would do it. But then there are the 10% of people who would say, "No, I'm not going to do that." And, you start to have arguments. Well, I need to have this, or you can't have the table. Oh, why do you need? And then you'd have an argument with people. But I'm blowing this out of all proportions.
Indoor meetings between one household and another will be permitted, and with both sets of grandparents if you see them separately. The Prime Minister spelt out at what Downing Street said would be the last daily Number 10 press conference.
We will be asking them to follow guidance on limiting their social contact rather than forcing them to do so through legislation. And this obviously...
So once again, asking people but not forcing them. Please wear a seatbelt. Please, don't take drugs. Please don't drive over the speed limit. If it's not enforced, once again, people will not respect it. You don't want to invest in the means to enforce this. So you're going to see more spikes. People are not going to follow the rules if there's no one to check. That's normal human behavior. If I see a speed camera, I slow down. Unless there is another speed camera, I'm going to speed up. People do it, and you're going to have the same problems with this.
Requires everyone to act responsibly, which I have no doubt.
Changes following the science or economic necessity. The Chief Medical Officer warned easing restrictions might mean more COVID infections and deaths.
If people hear a distorted version of what's being said that says this is all fine now, it's gone away, and start behaving in ways that they normally would have before this virus happened, yes, we will get an uptick, for sure. It is not risk-free. Absolutely not risk-free. Nobody thinks it is.
Well, some Tory MPs seem to think it's risk-free. Like, just let's reopen everything. To hell with the consequences. We need to reopen. Our supporters are getting upset. Our supporters are starting to consider maybe we should vote for the Labour Party next time. You promised us, a bonanza, and now Brexit is coming as well. But we expected everything to be good this year, and things are bad, and you're not easing the lockdown. We want you to ease the lockdown.
And we may, at some point, say that particular bit of the decisions that were taken is too much of a risk with the benefit of hindsight, and we have to go back on it.
The Prime Minister insisted talk of different measures in different parts of the UK was exaggerated. But even as he spoke, the Scottish Government was saying it hoped to open all schools to all pupils in Scotland from the middle of August. It draws attention to a complaint MPs on all sides make. Number 10 has managed to get licensed premises in England open some 2 months before all classrooms.
And as for July the 4th, well, I hope it will be a great day, but obviously, people have got to make sure they don't overdo it.
It's going to be a great day, but don't overdo it. Yes, it's the end of the lockdown, but don't celebrate. Boris is like trying to be, the strict headmaster, but the sort of cool headmaster at the same time. He's like, you guys, I don't want you smoking weed behind the shed, the bike shed. But if you do, share some with me. Max, in case you've missed it, GDPR, how are people going to trust to leave their name and address if there's no guarantee it's stored safely? Yes. The whole conditions of data protection. So another comment to Chris says, one problem with GDPR is most people don't even know what it is. And I'm not fully up to speed on it. I know that it's about protecting that people's data must be stored in within a form of encryption. And it's allowed to be stored for a certain period of time, and then it has to be destroyed. Now, once again, maybe I'm just talking crap here. I don't know. But I do know that people's data must be protected. So, if they're writing your name and address on a piece of paper in a back end chipper, no offense to chippers, but where's that data going to go? Is it going to be handed over to someone at the end of the night? Is it going to be destroyed? What's going to happen to it? Most people will say, well, I've nothing to hide, but that's not the point. I just saw a program about UK export to the EU. It will be a nightmare. The UK exporter are responsible for the declaration. They have to pay tariff and VAT upfront. Anything wrong, it is sent back. This is going to be a disaster train crash ahead. Your name is perfect for Brexit. That's what's going to happen. It's going to be a disaster. But they will be blaming the EU for all of this. But it's not going to solve the problems on the day. Christian says, Max, GDPR means all details have to be wiped from the system storing it. If it comes up after, company can be shut down. My God. There's a train crash ahead.
We can't have great sort of. I know that Chris is particularly worried about this. We can't have great sort of writhing scenes in the beer gardens when the virus could be passed on. This has got to be done in a sensible way.
And with that, 12 weeks of daily press conferences ended. Policy has shifted decisively, and the government hopes an economic disaster may have been averted.
Our health and social care editor Victoria MacDonald joins us now from the newsroom. Victoria.
Yes, well, we heard there Professor Chris Whitty, the Chief of Medical Officer, talking about distorted versions of the messaging. And what this comes back down to is that tension between the politics and the science. There is a need, the Prime Minister has told us emphatically, to get the economy up and running. And yet the fact is there is still a lot of infection in the community. It's the epidemic, Sir Patrick Vallance, the Chief Scientific Advisor, said is coming down slowly, but only between 2 and 4% a day.
So, yeah, it's completely correct. What's the problem is the infection is not down sufficiently, and the politicians are putting the pedal to the metal. Let's just go full steam ahead. It's the same approach that's taking place in many states in the US. Just reopen. And then what happens? They start to see the cases increase. Now, there is a lag, of course, so we're not going to see a huge spike immediately. It's going to be a gradual increase, I think, what's going to happen in the UK. But because it's so gradual, it will be gradual. It will be, well, it's not that serious, we're dealing with it. And then it will be back up to a level that's unsustainable. And then who's going to be blamed? Well, the public didn't follow the message. The public, didn't follow the rules. They broke the rules. But in this sense, it'll be difficult to blame the public when someone like Boris Johnson's advisor is wandering around without any punishment.
What's more, only 5% of us have appear to have antibodies to the virus, so most of us are susceptible to it. We heard there again Chris Whitty talking about this not being risk-free. He said...
Sorry, just want to say, yes, Max embedded in PCs, no press conferences, people think it's all over. Exactly. Moved away from, Boris is no longer doing press conferences. Shops and cinemas and bars are opening up again. We won! Victory! Mission accomplished. The war has been won. They'll say, the war hasn't been won. Yes, but the war has been won. Because that's what people are going to see. People are going to see life returning to normal. And they will become complacent. I see it here also in Italy. People are becoming complacent. People are filling up restaurants and bars. And the bars and restaurants are attempting to maintain checks and distance within them. But I think what's going to eventually happen is they're going to start to get sloppy. They're going to become a bit more flexible. Okay, this table should only have 3 people at it. Well, just on this one occasion, there are going to be 5 people. And then, the last time there were 5 people, it's okay if we do it again. And then it's going to continually get like that. And if there's no external, for example, entity like the government enforcing it, it's just going to continually slip. That's my feeling about it. It's natural. If you're on a diet, for the first couple of weeks, you're going to be strict. After that, you start to smuggle in a few chocolate bars. And then after 6 months, the weight has returned. I think that's what's going to happen also with this virus, that we're being strict. We'll start to ease too quickly. We're going to be sloppy with our controls and our restrictions, and then it's going to come back.
The advice is to stay at 2 meters, but if you can't do that, then of course for 1 meter, but mitigate that risk. Wearing face masks, well, that is quite a confusing message. Is it 1 meter? Is it 2?
Well, let's talk now to Professor Sian Griffiths. She chaired the Hong Kong government's inquiry into SARS and is a member of the Advisory Board of Public Health England. She joins us from Oxford. Can we just ask you, Professor Griffiths, do you feel comfortable with the idea of lifting restrictions, given there are still thousands of infections and not a few deaths?
This is a time for caution, but we have to start lifting the restrictions at some point of time. If you listen to the press conference, throughout the press conference, there was an underlying note of this is about balancing politics and health. This is about the economy and the benefits of opening up the economy, as well as the risks to health. And this is a risky business. However, having said that, there was also an emphasis on the fact that we need to think not that the 2 meter rule is gone, but the 2 meter rule is there, except that it's not a rule anymore. It's advice. If we can stay to 2 meters, that's good. If not, we should mitigate at 1 meter. And so I think that this is a step in the right direction. Many businesses, many business people, many parts of the country need to open up, need to start to open up, but at the same time, they need to stay vigilant. And I think that's a really important message. This is not about everything returning to normal. This is actually actually about this is a step in the right direction. As long as things go okay, we can continue to relax.
But I still think, and I agree with her, this is a good approach to take. But the problem is that the numbers are still too high. The numbers are still too high, the number of deaths and the number of new infections. If the numbers were lower, then I would completely agree with this. The numbers are almost at zero. Then what's the problem with opening cinemas and maintaining restrictions on, access or people's movements within restaurants or cinemas or whatever? But the problem is that Boris Johnson and his government haven't arrived at a level that is sufficiently low to ease the lockdown.
If things don't go okay, we will be back into lockdown.
Strange that you can go to the cinema but not to the theatre.
Well, being someone who likes the theatre, I'm not quite sure what the science there is, and I'm sure that the theatre. I think you will be able to go to the theatre soon. You can't go to live performances in the theatre, and it could be something to do with what happens on stage, or people projecting from the stage into the audience. It could well be something about that, but I do hope we see the theatres opening soon, because.
But it would actually make more sense, because you don't eat popcorn at the theatre. You eat popcorn in the cinema. So if you can go to the cinema, it would make more sense for it to be the other way around, in my opinion, because although maybe a theatre performance is longer, depending on the theatre performance. I don't know. Maybe as she has said, it's because they don't even know how no cinemas were still around. Dude is very funny. I know Netflix has replaced pretty much everything. But I still think the idea that it makes more sense for me, I don't know, to have a theatre open than a cinema. The masses don't. Artemis says the masses don't follow this stuff. Will not hear words of caution. They will take these easings as a sign that it is all safe. I agree. It's, they're looking at this. Oh, finally it's over. Finally it's won. Bravo, Boris. And we will see how bravo he will be. Now there is also the risk that maybe a new crisis will arrive and people will not be talking about corona anymore, even though the number of new cases will be increasing. Demand and taxes collected from cinemas are higher. It's about business at the end of the day. It's about making money. Of course, the restrictions in the cinema will be reduced. But yes, you're right, Christian. It's about money. Cinemas are much bigger money makers than theaters. Many theaters are actually run at a loss. What this comes down to is when I see Parliament full of MPs again, I'll be happy to return to the old normal. How many people go to cinema? I think the last time I went to the cinema, of course, it was before the crisis, before the... I think it was a Star Wars movie, but I don't remember which. The last one, The Rise of Skywalker. That's what I saw in the cinema. That was in December, I think. And then before that, I don't know. Maybe it was once in the summer. I like going to the cinema. It's a nice experience. I like to eat popcorn in the cinema. I like the large screen and the atmosphere. But I know most people don't bother with the cinema anymore. Do you think that the PMs won't afford anyone to go to number 10? To go to no deal? As Different Bias says, it was saying, do you think it will be a deal now that Bojo Saw doesn't have other options, or is it a dream? I still think they're hoping to go to a no deal. I think a no deal is still their objective. But I think we're going to have to see how the economy fares after the lockdown, if things start to improve, there is a possibility that things bounce back. I don't think so, but there is a possibility. And this could either improve the chances of a no deal or go against the chances of a no deal. That was the last film I saw as well. Keep spotting the reopen. They reopen the most profitable industries. Government needs 100.9% debt to GDP. These taxes at, yes. UBI. You know my feelings on UBI. I'm 100% behind the UBI. We need to be encouraging more people to stay at home, give them a UBI, get them to do something, get them to make masks or something.
Again, that's a whole other sector of our economy which has really suffered very badly during lockdown.
But don't you think this is actually rather confusing? I mean, why doesn't the government, for example, do you think, give really clear advice sector by sector? So, for example, if you're fit and over 70, X, Y, Z. If you're...
But they don't do that, because then they would have to take responsibility if people, you know, if people follow the rules and the rules were clear and the virus returned, then who would be blamed? Tom, thank you very much. Buy the hamsters some pub snacks. I will. They love pub snacks. I love pub snacks. So I'll definitely do that. Thank you so much for that super chat. But this idea of why aren't the rules clear is because by design they're not clear. Because if they were clear, once again, and the number of new cases increases, people would say, what the hell's happened? We followed the rules and the cases have returned. It's not our fault. So whose fault is it? It's about deflecting. It's about protecting the government, protecting the party.
Any age and suffer chest infections, ABC. If you're a mother with young children, well, people need to know exactly why are they fit. And surely with the internet and everything else, it would be possible for the government to put out very, very clear signals to each sector.
And instead, Boris Johnson is talking about sending out letters to people. Letters. He spent 100 million on let's get ready for Brexit. And they're spending nothing on information, or almost nothing on information about what people should be doing. Why was Brexit so important and this is not important?
Sector of society.
I think we need a continuing dialogue here, because there is a confusion. There's always a confusion when a new piece of guidance comes in. We have to absorb it and see some change in our, and how we all behave within it. I admit it's not entirely straightforward. It's quite difficult to remember between the different rules about the bubbles. And in a way, we have to really rely on each of us assessing what we know, assessing how it fits our lives, and reducing the risk as much as possible. Because, for example, we may choose...
Sorry to interrupt, but we're a bit pressed for time. Can I just ask you about Germany and South Korea very briefly? They've had really good records of dealing with COVID, and yet here they are having to impose new shutdowns.
Well, that's because the virus hasn't disappeared from anywhere in any country. And both South Korea and Germany have relied on test and trace as a means of controlling the disease throughout. And what they've done when they've seen these outbreaks is they're quite clustered outbreaks. They've then thrown the cordon around that particular area, brought in isolation, quarantine, and hope to suppress the...
And does anyone believe that Boris Johnson is going to do that? Does anyone believe that Boris Johnson's government is going to have a task force ready to deal with this? Or will it be, well, we better not be too strict because, one of the, it's a constituency that votes for the Conservative Party, so we don't want to be too strict. It's, once again, it's the politics are driving everything, not the science. The politicians should be handing this job over to the scientists and saying, look, you deal with it. Whatever resources you need, we will give it to you. It's like in the science fiction movies or the horror movies. The scientist says we need to do X, the politician says no, and then we have a disaster, and then at the end the politicians go to the scientist and say, we're sorry, please help us. Apart from Jurassic Park. But it's always like this, and once again I think this is what's happening in the UK. It's happening in other countries. I'm not focusing just on the UK here, but tonight this is Boris Johnson. But I don't think they're interested in actually dealing with this seriously. And if new spikes appear, what are they going to do? They'll ignore them. Dead people on the beaches of Jaws. Can we second wave goodbye to Space Force? Some things are best watched on the large screen. The Live Aid scene in Bohemian Rhapsody was a good example. So we got a bit sidetracked there. Of course, Spaceballs. Boris balls.
The disease. In Beijing last week, there was an epidemic in the market, starting in the market. There was very quick reaction, locking down the local environment, contact tracing, looking at people who've been in contact with the market, lots of testing. And the news this week is that the numbers are going down.
Professor Sian Griffiths, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.
Well, the President of the Royal College of Physicians and the Chair of the Royal College of Nursing are among several senior health leaders calling tonight for an urgent review of how the UK should prepare for a possible second wave of COVID-19. Dr. Fiona Godley, Editor-in-Chief of the British Medical Journal, is one of them and joins me now from Cambridge. Good evening. What sorts of lessons do we still need to learn?
Well, I think it's hard to say that the UK has done well through this pandemic, but this call for a rapid forward-looking review is really intended to be no blame. It's intended to be cross-party, across the Houses of Parliament and across the four nations, to really try to learn where there have been weaknesses in our response and what we can do differently to make sure.
I think we all know where the weakness is. It's in number 10. It's with his advisor as well. You can't say, well, you know, everyone has to take responsibility for this. It starts at the top. You know, they decided to ignore the science. They decided to exclude evidence. They went the political way. They didn't go the scientific way. So it's not fair to say, well, you know, we all have to take responsibility for this. No. The buck stops in number 10.
Sure that there isn't a further great deal of loss of life in the event of a second wave of COVID.
But in the government's terms, the NHS wasn't overwhelmed. Many intensive care units still had beds for people. So what is it you feel that needs to change? Because
well, I think
any peak isn't looking like it's going to be as big as the one we've already had yet, is it?
Well, I think that's very hard to tell. But I think first about the NHS, I don't think it's fair to say the NHS wasn't overwhelmed. I think it responded magnificently, but it's only been able to cope by stopping doing everything else. We now have a huge challenge of getting the NHS back on its feet. But this call that we're making is not really about that. It's looking at a number of issues where frontline workers are really struggling and seeing that things haven't really worked well. And the issues that have been identified initially, obviously if this takes place, the people running it will have to work out the scope. But the issues that we've identified have been around governance, around the links between local and central government, about the problems of unresolved issues around devolution.
My God, this is extremely frustrating. And I'm not even British. And this is... You have a pandemic. And instead of actually working together and putting politics aside, no, you have the Conservative Party with Boris Johnson, you know, politics 101, saying, okay, well, we're not going to... How can we deal with this crisis while at the same time not working with the devolved powers, not working with Scotland or Wales. How can we deal with this crisis while at the same time not working with Labour-held councils or municipalities? Once again, this idea that politics is going to get in the way of doing what's right is a disgrace. And anyone who is doing that should be out on their friggin' arse.
There's the fragmentation between health and social care and the lack of coordination between existing structures, which I think we've seen in the testing and in other parts of the response. There's procurement of goods and services. We've seen repeated, real failings there that have cost lives and caused a huge amount of lost public trust. And then there's this disproportionate burden on the community, and finally just lack of international coordination and learning from other countries.
And why? Because of the Brexit mentality. The Brexit mentality is, we can do it alone. We used to be an empire. We don't give a crap about France or Germany or South Korea or Japan or Taiwan. We can do it better ourselves. We don't need the EU. We don't need to be part of a EU procurement scheme. We can do it better ourselves. This is the Brexit mentality. Little England mentality. We don't need anyone else. We're the best. We can fix whatever problem by ourselves.
What if we don't see a second wave in the same way that we saw the first wave, but effectively just a long, low level of COVID deaths just carrying on for months and months?
I think that's probably what's going to happen. Whatever social distancing is put in place, I have a feeling that's what you're going to see. We're sort of seeing that here in Italy, that there is the numbers have reduced, but they're constant. They haven't dropped below 50. I think there were actually the number of deaths. I think it was 40 something a few days ago, but it hasn't dropped to zero. We haven't seen 0 cases yet in Italy. Now the number of infections are low, but I think what you're going to see is it's going to continue like that for a period of time.
Disease works its way through the population and then sort of joins up with whatever winter flu crisis we would have anyway. I mean, do we need to be thinking about a different scenario rather than just another wave?
Well, I think the word wave has been, lots of ways you can interpret it. I think flare-ups or spikes are certainly a possibility, and there's a real fear that when winter comes, that we will find ourselves in a very difficult position. I think what we don't want to do is continue to do the same as has been done and expect a different outcome. I think people are very frightened about that. With some justification. We want to prevent this from happening as well as to prepare for it. And the question is, what can a government and expertise bring to make sure that we have a better outcome than has been the case so far?
Dr. Godley, thank you very much indeed. Well, countries around the world with lowering infection rates have been easing out of lockdown, but stepping into the...
Elvis Hardy says, we don't stand a chance by ourselves. Not a chance. Of course, it has to be there has to be international cooperation, because you have people coming from other countries into your country who may be transmitting the virus. Your people may be going to other countries transmitting the virus. You have to work with other countries to understand what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong, and try to emulate what they're doing right and avoid what their mistakes. But this idea of no, we know what's right, it's the arrogance of the Conservative Party, and the arrogance, the cherry of arrogance on the top of the cake with Boris Johnson, someone who's incapable of saying I made a mistake. It takes guts to say I made a mistake, and I would actually have respect for Boris Johnson if he said, I made a mistake, I did something wrong, now I'm trying to fix it. And he actually meant it. But he can't. He sees it as weakness, not as a strength.
The unknown has not been without risk. As we mentioned earlier, Germany has reimposed restrictions for the first time in one area where cases have risen. And there are fears of a so-called second wave in South Korea too. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent Jonathan Rugman reports.
All over Europe, the rules are being relaxed, the barriers coming down. This the scene at Madrid airport, families reuniting after Spain reopened its borders for the first time in months. More people returned to work yesterday after the state of emergency was lifted, but 1.5 meters of social distancing is still required in Spain, or masks
That's not 1.5 meters.
worn if that's not possible. In France, all school children except sixth formers are supposed to be back now for the final fortnight of term, after a 1 metre distancing rule was deemed no longer compulsory. The French authorities want those who've fallen behind to go back over subjects they didn't understand during lockdown. Cinemas opened their doors in France yesterday, while museums began to reopen from the middle of May.
Well, French cinema, who likes French cinema apart from the French? Well, okay.
Cinema goers here said keeping a 1 metre distance was a small price to pay for not having to watch another film at home, streamed online. In Germany, one county has gone back into lockdown for at least another week, with Red Cross workers in the city of Gütersloh undertaking door-to-door mass testing to help slow an outbreak which infected over 1,500 workers at a meat processing plant. So cinemas and bars are closing there, though the authorities are not yet calling this a so-called second wave.
So eine zweite Welle kann eben immer kommen.
A second wave can come, and theoretically it could come in Germany. But I'm very optimistic, because people here know that and continue to behave cautiously. And if we continue to ban large events, I'm optimistic we can prevent this second wave.
In South Korea, the audience for the world's only viewable production of Phantom of the Opera have been turned into phantoms themselves. Temperature checks and health questionnaires are de rigueur here. All the more so since the mayor of Seoul talked of a possible second wave following a cluster of cases linked to nightclubs and bars.
It might be okay for those younger generation and younger people, but they would be bringing back those diseases to their families, and which will affect their older elderly, their grandfather and grandmothers and grandparents.
Around 3 million Chinese in Beijing have been tested since an outbreak at a wholesale food market 12 days ago. Isolating the ill seems to be working, but passenger numbers on the Chinese capital's train network have fallen, a reminder that the road back to normal may not be straightforward.
And I think we're going to see similar cases in Europe and the UK. What they have is that vapor machine. I think I assume it's pumping out bleach, which is fantastic to breathe in. If the virus doesn't kill you, the bleach will. His English is better than mine. I assume you're talking about the South Korean guy. Yes, his English is very good for. But he is a professor at a university, so I think his English should be good. There's obviously going to be a second wave. The looser the restrictions, the bigger the wave. I think I agree, but also disagree. I think there's a chance that if we have suppressed it enough, it will start to increase. But then we have to be dynamic. We have to be proactive with it. So we have to have ready in place. Okay, there's a small spike here. There's an outbreak here. Close down the town. Test everyone in the town. Impose a lockdown for whatever time is necessary. Monitor it, and then you're able to maintain a suppression. The problem is if you have multiple outbreaks at the same time, you'll end up having to do a national lockdown instead, and then that's going to be extremely damaging to the community, to the economy, and to people's lives. Okay, guys, so we're going to we're almost to the end of the live stream tonight. So I just want to finish on one for the road. So before we finish, I'll go to that and just upload the video here. Just a moment. But before we go to that, just see some of your comments. Still better than Corbyn. I've lost count how many people I hear use that defense of Boris Johnson. Anyone, even Michael Gove would have been better than Boris Johnson. I'm trying to think of anyone would have been better than Boris Johnson. So Jeremy Corbyn would definitely have been better than than Boris Johnson, certainly. Quick, anyone say something clever? Hamsters have performed well tonight. They're staying alert. So alert into the pub night, yes. Priti Patel, no, not Priti Patel tonight.
Hi there, Nicola here. Just want to say that I know Boris has moved the rules for 2 metres down to 1 metre plus. I mean, I don't know. Is he expecting every bastard to have a tape measure about with them? The very fact most people don't know the difference between 6 inches, 2 metres, 1.5 metres, I don't even know. And I've got everybody shouting at me, Nicola, why don't you open up the hotels in the tourist sector? Well, I'll tell you, I'm not doing this deliberate to annoy everybody. If I open up all the hotels in the tourist areas and everybody starts dying, there'll be no bastard fucking alive to go to these places, and then I won't get a
sorry.
wink of sleep because the country start dying again. Don't make me come out there with a measuring tape and put my toe up the crack of your arse. I've had it up to high door with a lot of them. I'm trying to save people's lives here. I'm not trying to break businesses. It's my job to try and make sure we all protect others. Right, I need to calm myself down. I'm going to see what Big Stephen's got to say about this. Well, as a scientist, I know exactly what 6 inches and 12 inches looks like, Nicola, so that's quite a generalisation you've made there. But we're asking people to wear a mask on buses, and if you don't wear a mask, we don't want everybody breaking into a big fucking rammy. Just try and protect others. It's not that hard. 2 metres away, wear a mask, get on a bus. Right, whatever. I've calmed down a wee bit. Right, thanks everybody for listening. I'm looking forward to going to the hairdressers next month because I've been rubbing a big brown bingo pen right into my scalp, and let me tell you, that's no been fun. Right, keep safe. I'll see you all tomorrow. Look after each other. Where's my good fucking clicky pen? Right, I'm going to walk 6 inches. Frank, get the door. I want a steak bake the day.
Fantastic. Always a Janie. Okay, so thank you so much to everyone who's come on the stream tonight. We had lots of comments, lots of likes. Fantastic. Started off really well, and we got up to, I think it was almost 200 views tonight. That was fantastic. Thanks to everyone who liked the stream. So once again, thanks for all of your comments. Thanks to all of the moderators for doing a fantastic job tonight, as always. And thanks to everyone for their super chats and their comment and their donations. They're greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. So guys, once again, have a great night. I'll see you all on Friday night for the next live stream, the second live stream of the week. So remember, I'm not going to tell you to stay safe, but remember 1 meter plus. That is the new slogan for the future. So take care, guys. I'll see you soon, and remember to wash those hands. Good night, guys. See you soon.